Hi everyone, welcome to Poisonous People. Today we're continuing our series on diagnosing narcissistic personality disorder, and in this video we're going to be discussing criterion number 8, envy. So we're still on top of page 670, and the DSM-5 reads as follows. This is number 8, and it says, is often envious of others or believes that others are envious of him or her. The first thing I do want to say, the first interesting thing I want to say about this is that it's very clear that the word being used is envy and not jealousy. We tend to use those two words interchangeably, but they actually are not synonyms. They do not mean the same thing. Jealousy strictly refers to when you have something and you're afraid that you're going to lose it. Envy is when you do not have something, but you want it. And especially when you see that somebody else has that thing, you become very upset because that other person has it and you want that thing. The DSM does use the term envy. It does not use the term jealousy. The second interesting thing I want to point out is that this is the only criterion that is an example of projection. So what you see here in the first half is often envious of others. That's what's really going on. The narcissist is envious of others, but this second half is pure projection. Believes that others are envious of him or her. The third interesting thing that I want to point out about criterion 8 is that this is also a criterion that kind of shows you both sides of the coin, the grandiose and the vulnerable. It's interesting because you can kind of see this, Jekyll and Hyde type of vibe coming right off the page. Either they're envious of others, and that would be the vulnerable, like, gee, I wish I was like this person, or I wish I had their life. Or they believe that others are envious of them, and that kind of points to the more arrogant side of narcissism. So you can see just within this one criterion how the narcissist's sense of self can be very unstable. I'm not saying that we should assess their identity, the instability of their identity just on this one thing, but I just find it interesting that as simplistic as this criterion is, a lot can be pulled from it. Now let's take a look at some of the ways that a narcissist might suggest in their behavior that they are envious or they think others are envious of them. Really, what we're going to have to focus on is the multitude of ways that they suggest that they are envious of other people. So the first one is sarcasm and jokes, making fun of you, mocking you, and over time, this teasing can graduate into full-on bullying. When a narcissist feels envious, they're not feeling very good about themselves. And so one of the ways they will lift themselves up is by putting you down. In a sense, it is the opposite of arrogance, which is why I said, the first part of this criterion is the vulnerable. The other part is the grandiose. But when they are in this mode, when they're in envying other people mode, they're feeling kind of low. And so they want to drag other people down with them. It kind of levels the playing field and makes them feel a little bit more equal. Another thing that you will see is negativity and criticisms of events and celebrations. They're being negative about something that is in celebration of you. So if it's your birthday, they might make some comments about how, this isn't really a great party, or they've seen better, or they've been to better parties. Meanwhile, the narcissist is wishing the whole time that this was an event that was organized to celebrate them. Another thing you're going to see is that the narcissist will focus on your flaws, and this can sometimes be in the form of positive feedback. So they may say something like, well, you did a great job. It's just too bad that this happened. It's almost as if they're trying to make it sound like they wish that it went better for you. But really, they're spending so much time focusing on this one negative thing that they're glad that it was flawed, and they want to call attention to that flaw. Because when everybody else is commending you or patting you on the back, again, it's a way of bringing you back down because they're envious of that attention and that admiration that you're getting. That's something that they want. Another way that narcissists might indicate that they are envious is they will use slander and defamation. And sometimes you will often see this directly. They'll just come right out and say, I hate that guy. And I've noticed that if you question them and you ask them, why do you hate this person? And you want some substantial reasoning, they're not able to give you any solid reasons for why they hate that person. They will just say things like, he's a jerk. Or you might actually see more projection. They may say, oh, he's so arrogant, or he's a know-it-all. But they're not actually giving any evidence that the person is arrogant or a know-it-all. What probably happened is that guy's getting attention and admiration, or maybe in a meeting, this person said something that sounded more intelligent than the narcissist. And so the narcissist envies that person's ability to articulate or command control of a room, and that just makes them hate the person, which means that this is also an example of splitting. We don't have to hate somebody because they're better at some skills than we are, but if the narcissist is envious of that, they're just going to end up painting the whole person black and hating the whole person. If the envy is kind of blended with entitlement or arrogance, you will see the narcissist making direct comments. And one of the most common things a narcissist will say when they are feeling envy is, they don't deserve that, I do. Another way that a narcissist might indicate that they are envious is by sour grapes. Now, this frequently happens when the narcissist has to recover because they spent so much time telling people that they wanted something and then they didn't get it. And that's when they will put down that item and pretend like they never wanted it in the first place. And of course, the term sour grapes comes from the Aesop fable of the fox who wanted some grapes, but he couldn't reach them. And so he just said, I don't want those grapes anyway. They're probably just sour. Now, gossip is an interesting one because this can also double for arrogance. So I'll talk more about gossip when I get to the arrogance video. But typically, people who are envious are going to pull people down. What does gossip do? It pulls people down. If they know some information about somebody that doesn't paint them in a very good light, they will certainly waste no time spreading that around and making sure that everyone else knows that this person has a flaw. This is different from the smear campaign. The smear campaign is when somebody smears you because they're angry and they're trying to punish you or they're trying to get ahead of you telling your version of the story. But when gossip happens and it doesn't seem to have any apparent reason, there's been no falling out. On the outside, things still seem to be intact. If they gossip behind your back, it's usually a sign of envy, which is also tied to the devaluation stage. But I don't want to get too involved here because this is just a diagnostic video. Another sign that a narcissist is envious of somebody else is property damage. And this is kind of extreme, but I have seen it happen where the narcissist just took it upon themselves to damage somebody else's else's property just because. And I did have a narcissist come through my practice, and he didn't like the fact that the room he was renting, the people he was renting a room from, that they had a nice house and he didn't. And when it was time for him to move out, he broke a bunch of stuff in their house. And when I asked him, his reasoning was, well, they didn't deserve it. I should have this nice house, not them. So usually when there's property damage, the narcissist will probably have higher levels of the grandiosity, because there's sort of the delusion present there, that they think they're more deserving. So they think they're more important, or, they're rating themselves higher than they really are. You will also see that they're probably a little bit higher levels of lack of empathy, right? Because why would you damage somebody else's property if you had empathy for them? Another thing you'll see is higher levels of entitlement and arrogance. Now, that doesn't mean they have to have all of those qualities, but usually if a narcissist is going to go as far as damage somebody's property because of envy, there's usually another narcissistic trait working in tandem to give them the extra push that's needed to actually act on that envy and damage somebody's property. So I hope that this has helped you understand envy a little bit better. I'm Jen Guerriero, and this is Poisonous People. Thanks for watching.